Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. What we will be doing today is covering how the workplace will change as a result of COVID, and also then kind of look at how activity-based working is going to be a good way to actually manage some of these changes in the workplace, and then go on further to explore some of the ways that you can actually leverage data to help you effectively manage your reopening office plans as well. We'll follow up with Q&As at the end of the session. So without much further ado, I'd like to pass you on to Yodit Stanton, who is our CEO and founder. So over to you, Yodit.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I know how busy you guys are, especially over the last couple of months. My name is Yodit. I run OpenSensors. Just a bit of background. OpenSensors, we deploy utilization and environmental sensors, and we help our clients understand data around their offices. I think it's fair to say that all of us that work in real estate in any capacity over the past few months have had quite an unprecedented time. And we've been working with our clients and also us as a company to figure out how to initially go fully distributed with very few days notice. But now that the initial panic is over, everyone is asking what's next and looking ahead. So we're gathering information. We're trying to make as much information as possible available so that people can have guidance and also kind of the community can learn from each other, because this is very new territory for everyone. So the focus of today is really kind of getting to the point of like how do we move forward, and what we'll cover is what the future of offices will be like. At least kind of our current working assumption is that the disruption after lockdown is eased, disruption will continue for some time. No one can say how long, but we're looking ahead 18 months, 2 years. Our friends in working in business continuity are planning on potential scenarios where no vaccine comes into the general population for a few years, and really kind of thinking very hard about how to make businesses as resilient as possible. So the initial themes that we're seeing develop is obviously working from home is here to stay. I think even for organizations that did not have a culture of remote working, they have realized that it's working for quite well for most. There are some interesting developments that we're seeing. Gartner surveyed CFOs in March, and the majority think are really looking at the cost implications of what will look like. What would, if a significant portion of the employees are regularly working from home, what does that mean for their real estate footprint? So something like 74% of CFOs have cited that they plan to move more employees to permanently work from home, or at least majority work from home. Social distancing is also influencing this. I think it'll continue for at least 12 to 18 months. Or some kind of long-term time frame. So people are starting to think about what the implications are for their leases. Do they expand the leases, and any kind of expansion plans that they've got going on? It also, I think, raises the question on how to manage the real estate better for the foreseeable future. I think pre-COVID, we were seeing at OpenSensors, average utilization for most companies was between 40 to 50%. So half of the workplace was underutilized. Now, obviously, with post-COVID, people are going to maintain low utilization levels purposefully, but in very interesting ways. And I think we're going to go through some of the tactical strategies that people are using to do this. When work from home wasn't actually embraced before, the biggest pushback tended to be from management teams, leadership teams, on a team level or departmental level mostly. They worried about the ability of their teams to collaborate effectively or be productive. But the feedback that we're seeing, both from subjective feedback that we're seeing from clients and also from surveys that Colliers and others have done, is actually productivity has been quite surprisingly good. And considering we're working in times of pandemic when people are taking care of their children and so forth, and working from home. Some interesting stats is that 75% of employees feel their productivity is either the same or even better than when they were in the office. The 25% of employees who felt that their productivity declined. I think the question is that because of the times that we're working in normal times, if they were not tending to children and really worrying about their loved ones, is the productivity hit because of that, or the work from home? But regardless of productivity, most people, 85% of employees would prefer to spend a significant part of their week working from home post-COVID. And I think this is the kind of the most interesting implication, is that people like it. It's very, very popular, and I think taking that away wholesale is probably quite, at least not very pragmatic. And the culture of organizations has been changed greatly. So one thing we are going to do is I'm just going to launch a poll. It would be really interesting to know about your work from home situation, how long you think your workforce will continue to work from home. We're going to share it. I think it's a good learning for everyone. So what we're seeing is the results. Okay, so from here we're saying 35% think work from home will continue to work from home 2 to 3 months. Another 40-odd% are saying 4 to 6 months, and 20-odd% are saying long term, 7 to 12 months. So that is quite interesting. Subjectively, this really kind of confirms a lot of my observations from what I'm seeing in the industry. And I think for most of you that are making contingency plans, I think taking this into account, this is not a short-term thing. Majority are going to, are expecting 4 to 6 months, autumn to maybe going in even into 2021 in terms of fully coming back into the office. So, I mean, what does this mean for FM? And I think it's been interesting. Workplace in FM as a role, as a job title, has been evolving pre-COVID anyway. I mean, it's been becoming not just kind of about space, but now I think COVID has become a forcing function, and a lot of our clients and a lot of our community members are saying that the last couple of months has been some of the hardest in their careers. They've had to balance the needs of the business in terms of operational needs, and work really, really fast to adapt. And at the same time, the evolution in technology has really kind of been rapidly changing. Whereas I mean, culture has been the slowest thing, and FMs have had to manage all this and have done quite heroic tasks, to be honest. So what we're saying is kind of the role of FM has been coming up with policies, working out technology needs, and also looking after employee well-being in quite a distressing time. Workplace managers are also no longer worrying about just kind of not just the space, but also kind of the overall angle has been, kind of worry, like, I guess the theme of workplace has been around providing a much more positive employee experience, a holistic experience. And in all honesty, most of you should be recognized as heroes. You've managed extremely well in very, very difficult circumstances. And the way I think we like to define it, and I think the way, as well as yourselves, the way you should describe your jobs has been kind of bringing people, space, and technology, enabling change, and making the business, sustainable. And the kind of the high profile nature of the last couple of months should at least be a demonstration of how tangible the benefits are that the business gets from your roles. And the other kind of, I guess, evolution, and really I think activity-based working is maturing now, and this is really a pivotal moment for activity-based working as a concept. It's becoming the cornerstone of pretty much everyone's real estate strategy. If a significant portion of the workforce is going to be working from home, then what is the office for? And workplace management really needs to be clear about the intention of why are people coming in. They can use a desk at home. There's nothing stopping people from just working on a PC. Like, why are they coming in? So kind of leveraging data. I mean, data is there's many angles to it. There's obviously utilization data, but also the kind of the more subjective surveys like Leseman and other subjective surveys, and really kind of you need to leverage what this information is telling you to really understand what people need. You know, kind of, and every data set is important. I think, you know, a mistake would be just to use one data set. Like, self-reported data isn't enough. We know when people self-report that they over-report, they overestimate. You can say, you know, people say they have utilization of 50% when it's measured. This is real kind of client studies. It's been like 15% and so forth. But what subjective surveys are really, really good at is giving information what type of work people do. At OpenSensors, even though our primary work is sensor information, I've sat in a number of in-depth interviews, and I've tried to understand, you know, what is the team level needs, and it's really, really important to understand the whys in order to really make very concrete recommendations on how the space configuration should work. For example, for tech teams, there's different types of Scrum and so forth, but it's really, really, you need these interviews to understand their particular application of Scrum, how they conduct stand-ups in terms of face-to-face and so forth, how they use Kanban boards, so that the recommendation might not be to necessarily, you know, change the space. The recommendation might be actually you've got online tools you can use to better collaborate and free people from having to come in, having to commute in all at the same time on one particular day. But other times, depending on their needs, you know, you know, kind of more collaboration areas might be key. So the kind of a mix of these data sets is really, really, really important, and I cannot emphasize that enough. And with activity-based working, and we've written quite a lot about what it is as a concept, so if you're not familiar with it, I really recommend that you look into some of the blogs, and we'll send you some of the write-ups. Activity-based working is all about designing the right dynamic for different types of areas, what the mix should be between, you know, collab, desk, and so forth. And no company is the same. It's never been the same. It's radically different from company to company, from its culture. And you need to really work out your culture to understand the right mix. What is also, I think, quite apparent is utilization data, and even the Leeson studies, you know, pre and post COVID are going to look significantly different. So thinking about really kind of taking snapshots quite, at least quite regularly is what I would recommend. And I think one of the key mistakes I see when people kind of undertake ABW from a desk ratio perspective is they go for a very kind of high level, you know, we're going to do a kind of a 1 to 2 person to desk ratio or whatever, a top level crafting of and then it kind of goes into it. But generally what really you need to do is look at profiles, and the profiles between teams and departments will vary greatly. And kind of looking at mobility categories is at least the way we approach it, and it seems to be the kind of the right way that we can see doing it. However, now in post-COVID, obviously more people are working from home, and I think businesses are recognizing that as the companies can operate remotely, again, the mobility profiles the dynamics are going to change in a massive way. So the things that you have to consider is obviously there's the implications to the building and lease costs if the majority of employees are working from home. You know, I suspect most of you are going to have to change your workplace settings temporarily and then in the long term. I think the one desk per employee scenario is pretty much out the window going forward. So kind of looking at what is the right combination of seating will depend on the mobility profile. If you have a highly mobile workforce, that will look very, very different to majority desk-bound workforce, and really that is very determinant on the role and also the culture of the organization. And as more employees are kind of naturally comfortable working from home, the question is what is the right type of mix that is going to be appropriate. And one of the things I think we're kind of keenly working on is I think the approach that at least the first part of the lockdown or part of the transition is going to be people are taking an approach of rotating teams based on blue team, green team, or group A, group B, and rotating them. So group A comes in for 1 to 2 weeks, group B comes in for 1 to 2 weeks, and rotating and having a cleaning schedule in between. Now the interesting thing has been that what we're seeing is most people are trying to keep utilization levels of between 20 to 30% initially, and then building up. So really kind of looking at the comparisons between the teams and the groups and making sure that the utilization level stays where it is important. Most people are taking the approach of ensuring that there's kind of zigzag shaped seating plans and keeping desks, keeping kind of social distancing in the office. So, really kind of monitoring your utilization is going to be super important. So like we said before, I think social distancing rules will apply in a major way, but I just wanted to touch on really think very, very hard about the design. Think very, very hard on the floor plate of how social distancing would work. Think very, very hard about ensuring that you've got signage to make sure signage or at least kind of physically to tell people what desks they can use and so forth. People will revert to their natural habits, which we all do. I mean, I'm guilty of that, of interacting with people and so forth. But really think very hard about how to reinforce your social distancing policies with physical signage and so forth. But most FMs are going to have to look at the floor plan. Guidance is sit people between 2 or 3 desks away from each other. Do not have people sitting back to back or should we say kind of face to face, and having kind of the zigzag shape is going to be really important. At least initially, what we say is kind of keep utilization around 20-25%. Keep a list of the groups and really kind of have, let's say, a sandbox between different groups, deep cleaning as you rotate people, and also focusing your cleaning efforts in a major way, and really collaborating with utilization data or any kind of badging data that you have, highly encouraging your cleaners to focus on areas that people are coming in. It's critical that kind of the cleanliness and the deep cleaning is focused on and really ramped up. It also gives obviously employees a better sense of confidence outside of the practical, the viral infections and so forth. There's going to be a lot of anxiety coming in, and I think clearly demonstrating how you're going to take care of people is again going to fall to you as the workplace managers. And again, this falls into the prep area of as you're kind of thinking about prepping the office now before anybody comes in, is really looking at your fresh air levels and changing any filtering on HVACs and so forth. Early indications are that humidity level should be kept between 40 and 60% indoors to contain the virus. This is still evolving, but I think it's interesting information that you should keep an eye on in terms of what are the environmental factors that are going to be necessary to keep on top of the deep cleaning. And I think a final point for most of you, you had to shut down your office on the fly. It was an emergency situation and you probably had a week or two's notice. The coming back into the office has to be managed much more as a project, much more as a change management process, and really think about, we're now in the prep time, we're now in the first phase where we're looking at strategies, communication, what should the cleaning regimes be, and so forth. Then in the post return, you also have to kind of keep an eye on this feedback loop and really kind of keeping a very close eye on how it's working and preparing to make some changes and so forth. Look at activity-based working. If you're not familiar with the concepts and the applications, I really recommend that you do some self-educating there. We've written a lot. There's some really good guides out there as well. Look at the mobility profiles of your teams. It will be completely different now, and you're going to have to think about how to manage that with social distancing, especially. How do you give both the assurance but also balance the kind of the real estate portfolio? And employee feedback, cannot emphasize this enough. Use the survey tools. They don't have to be that complicated. Leesman do a great one. There are others out there that are lightweight, but do them regularly. Get feedback as much as possible, and we're here to support as well, and we're releasing quite a lot of material. Just to remind you all, we've released a comprehensive checklist on reopening the offices. Please use it, and let us know that a lot of this information is evolving, so we're trying to be as supportive as possible.
Thanks, Yoda. First question we've got here, which kind of goes back to some of the points you made earlier on, is what is the ideal utilization rate to stagger people back in the office?
So what we're saying is 20 to 30% is the initial one, the initial at least kind of benchmark, and then ramping slowly, and then working up by 10% and so forth. I really think that a big bang would be problematic for many reasons, and I think you'd have a lot of problems to deal with. So just the kind of the most conservative. Within the checklist, one of the things we've said is, initially just identifying who are the key workers that need to come back. That is very much office based, and work from home is difficult for, and then ramping up to the groups and then rotating. That is at least that's the most practical way that we can see the ease back happening, and just take your time with it.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, another question's come through. So this question is around environmental data. And so the question is, what is the easiest way to gather environmental data?
The simplest is, let's say, CO2, humidity, temp levels, and there's sensor technologies that gather that. You can distribute those around the office. I would say kind of one on every few banks of desks. On a floor plate, they don't, unless the kind of the airflow is, most offices the airflow is quite consistent, so a few on a floor plate is sufficient. Those are the kind of the easiest ways to gather environmental data. For VOCs and so forth, which the well building standard obviously would be part of. There's other more I don't know what to call it, but more analog tools to do that. But specifically for CO2, humidity, which are the subjects that I've talked about, I think sensor data is the easiest one.
Great stuff. Okay, so a third question's come through. So this question is around working from home. So if the workforce is moving towards working from home, how can you measure this effectively?
Oh, that's a big subject. Productivity is so hard. So this is a hard one. I think everyone's productivity has suffered, like kind of working in pandemic times. So I think this is a very different scenario that we're working in than regular work from home. That's one thing to say. I think until schools go back, until the kind of the general dangers that we've passed the danger zone, where there's distressing news and so forth. My expectation is this is a very different working situation to regular, remote teams, and I've worked in teams that have had very heavy remote capability. So that's one thing to add. I think productivity, people have tried to define productivity, and it's such an undefinable thing, but it's a to me at least, it's asking people. The employee surveys give, they show, well, they have direct productivity related surveys, but also obviously kind of having the in-depth surveys with the team leaders and so forth, and how things are working. Are you meeting your targets and your goals and so forth is going to be the key. But there's going to be a number of factors that impact or at least indicate productivity. So it's a very hard one to answer with one metric.
Another one's come through. So this question is about, I guess, usage of high-level touch areas such as lifts, toilets, etc. So this question is, if 50% of the people return back to the office, what is the best approach for, using places like the, pardon, the lifts, toilets, and things like that?
Okay, we've gone quite in depth into this in the checklist, by the way. So I really recommend that whoever that asked that question read the checklist and download it. It's free and so forth. So first of all, I wouldn't recommend that people open their offices for 50%, at least initially. I think you need to be really good at executing on social distancing guidelines and really kind of phasing it back. That's one thing I would say. For lifts specifically, I think the biggest danger is people coming in having a start time of like 8 or 9 o'clock and really kind of staggering start times and staggering leaving times. Really discourage folks from I guess from enforcing start times and stagger people. That's the key. The other one, and again we've gone into this in the checklist, is providing people with masks and so on. Really kind of thinking about what PPE kit you're going to have to provide to employees. I know some countries are as part of their transition back, are making it a requirement for employers to provide a PPE kit and really think very carefully about how to do this. And does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I think what's quite clear is that there's still many unknowns, but there are, some tactical approaches that we can, as a community, take forward in terms of just making sure that these high touch areas or commonly used areas are safeguarded with hand sanitizers, disinfectant products for employees to use. But again, there is a section in our checklist that does cover that.
And I think the biggest thing that will change from, obviously the first thing is policies, but the second thing is the cleaning regimes. That is going to be an incredible change that we're going to see.
Okay, so just one final question and then we will wrap up. What data points would you recommend to analyse if we're looking at our whole real estate portfolio?
So I'm going to put aside the immediate post-COVID, because most leases are considered 12 to 18 months. Let's just assume the world stabilizes and we're looking ahead and kind of 2 years down the line. The mobility profiles are going to be key. If you have 100 employees and you have a workforce that is highly mobile, as in they, on average, they come into the office 1 or 2 days a week. That is a very different situation to a workforce that's majority fixed. That, if it's majority fixed desking, then you're looking at, probably should have one-to-one desking and providing, appropriate desking facilities for that. But if your workforce generally has a kind of a tendency to be highly mobile, then you can be very, very aggressive about the desking ratios, and then you start adding the mix with collaboration areas and so forth. I would say in terms of if you're looking at consolidation, the mobility profiles are key, really.
Absolutely. Okay, I think that's all the questions we've got for today. Thank you to you, Yodit, for sharing all this resource and information with us. So I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you soon on our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And just to add one more thing is we are trying to collate and really kind of help the community help each other. If you are struggling with particular issues, do let us know. So on that note, I'll let you get on for the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.